Hello guys, Nigel here with you, Nigel's Modelling Bench, and here we are back now with this beautiful little K2 ambulance. This is the Airfix kit, which is absolutely gorgeous and going together really well. And this is now part 14, which is ridiculous. So, where are we? When I left you last time, we'd glued in the mudguards and everything in the back. So they're all in and painted now. They're primed up in black. Very difficult to get the paint in there. If you're building one of these, I would suggest getting some paint on them before you attach these rear mudguards. The actual, I've fitted the front steps as well because I wanted to get some paint onto those. So those little front steps have gone on. So that's all done now and ready for the green paint. I also primed up the rear step, as you can see here. Remember, we glued that onto the chassis. I've since done a bit of research and it looks like the step was wood with like a steel frame. So what I'm going to do, you can see I've painted it tan. I've got some brown oil paint here ready to go, so I'm going to do the wood grain effect on there, the same as we did on the floor and everything. And then I'm going to put like a steel colour around the outside and then hairspray it and then paint it green, and then we'll chip it and perhaps add a little bit of rust and stuff to it as well. So that's just something else we can do. I should probably do that off camera because you've seen me do all that. If you haven't seen that, go back, have a look around the earlier parts of the video where we did the wood in the floor and the wood in the back and everything, and I showed you different ways of doing it. On here I'm just going to use the oil. So if you remember, on the floor here I did some work with different colour paints, but on here I'm just going to use oil and then get a wood grain effect like that. In fact, I might even do it in this video and show you how I do it. Looking on through the instructions, looking at some of these smaller parts, these parts here for this bull bar thing, there are ejector pin marks on the inside which are horrible, so I've actually filled those and then rubbed them down and then primed over with some black just to see what they look like. They're okay. The mirrors, I've cleaned up some of the sprue nibs. We're going to paint those in a minute. We're going to paint those with some silver paint. The hinges will be left off until right near the end before we spray the body because they're going to be so vulnerable, they're going to get knocked off. So they're the hinges for the rear doors, and they go into these little recesses in the sides and stick out like that. You can see they're going to be quite vulnerable, so I'm not going to put those on right away. We've got these are the side lights that go on top of the wings on the front fenders, and they're going to go into those little holes in there like so. So we'll get those on as well, because I want to get them on and get the glue to dry, because what I'm going to do is show you that you don't, with small parts, what you can sometimes do is actually cut the sprue like this. Okay, so we can separate these off like so, and then we can actually glue those in with the sprue still attached. And then what we do is, once the glue is dry, we cut the sprue off and clean up the part. It makes it much easier to hold. Looking at these headlights, I think Airfix have made a mistake here. They've got the part numbers mixed up here on D48 and D49. I'm looking at the headlights here, and as you can see, D49, they're saying here, which is the left-hand headlamp, would be fitted. So if you're looking at the headlamp face on, this is the front. Okay, so we would turn it over. This is 49, and you can see that the recess underneath is for the right hand side. You can see there that if you were sitting in the driver's seat, you can see, looking at the back, you've got the little lump that the end of the arm is going to go into, and then the relief for the arm to go into is on the left hand side. So 48 and 49 are mixed up in the instructions, so just remember that. We have the headlight lenses here which are moulded in clear, and they are horrible. They've got this grainy finish to them for some unknown reason. Or maybe they're trying to depict they've got covers on them, but then why would they have moulded them in clear? And the other thing I would normally do, you'd have a bowl that you'd paint silver and polish and then put the lens on, but on here you've got this huge flat area where the part glues on, and as you can see, you're going to end up, it's going to look awful. So paint the back of the lens silver and then glue it on, but I think what I'm going to do is use the blackout lights, because they just don't look very nice at all. They're not. I'll paint them silver and we'll see what they look like, but I don't think they look very nice at all. And then here are the supports. These go into these are going to fit into the grille. How do they go? That's going to go in like that. Nope, sorry, that one's going to go in like that. That's upside down. That one's going to go in there. so they're going to fit in there really nice. It's a shame that Airfix didn't just mould the headlamp with this included in it. We've got some seam lines on there just to clean off, but it's a shame they didn't make these as one with the headlights, but I guess it would have been difficult to mould as one. So there we go. So what I've got to do now is paint. Now I'm going to use this paint here, but I've never used this paint. This is the first time I've ever used it, so I'm going to give it a good old shake. And this is a new Mr. Colour Silver Metallic 2. Silver Duralumin. It's like an aluminium colour, but I think it's buffable. I think. So let's have a look in here. That's interesting. The lid has got like a little nodule in the middle. Let's just give it a stir. Just make sure there's no sludge in the bottom. That's what I want to be sure of. So I'm going to grab a brush. Let's grab a little small brush, and we'll start off by painting the back of these lights because I don't think I'll be using them, but we'll see how they look. So we'll just get some paint onto them, like so. Okay, and as you can see from the front, they don't look very nice at all as headlamps go, so perhaps not use those. And then here we've got the mirrors. I'm going to paint these with this silver paint, and hopefully we'll be able to buff them and make them look lovely. If not, we'll remove the paint and do something else. I want to depict them as mirrors. I want them to be nice and shiny. But I have a feeling, I'm not sure, to be honest, I can't be bothered to go and have a look. I'm sure these paints are buffable. I know the ordinary metallic Mr. Hobby paints are buffable, so we shall see. Now the little side lights there, they seem to have covers on them or something. You can see here they seem to be blacked out, so I won't be painting those bright silver. I will have to do some research and see, but you have to be very careful with your research now, because most of the images you're going to see on YouTube or whatever, on YouTube, on Google, are going to be restored vehicles, and if they're on road legal they have to have side lights, so they will have had side lights. It's like when you see Jeeps down in below, you know, you've got the front grille, and then down below you've got the recess with the where people generally put indicators in there or side lights. They would generally be little tiny formation marker lights, so be careful what you're looking at. So I'm going to let that dry, and then we'll see if we can give it a buff, and then we'll go from there. Alright, so I've done the oil, just brushed it on there as you've seen me do before, and then I got a cotton bud and just worked it around, so we've got that sort of wood grain looking finish. So we'll leave that to dry for 24 hours or whatever, and then I'll give it a clear coat, and then I'm going to go around the sides with a steel colour and everything. So this video will be the normal sort of length, but it's probably going to take me 3 or 4 days to make it. So in the meantime, what we can do is get on and get some of this other stuff done so it can get on drying. Now these headlights, as I say, they're handed wrong, so don't worry about having the right part number, because it's quite obvious which side goes where because of that cutout. So we'll just cut these off of the sprue, and we can throw the sprue away. Basically what I'm trying to do here is end up with an empty box that I can put into the recycling, and then that is a successful result because we've finished the kit. So let's just clean these nibs off of here. What is nice is they've put the sprue nib facing inwards towards the radiator, so that's cool. Right, so I'm going to use these blackout lights because these headlights look horrible. This silver paint is polishable, by the way. It is buffable, and you can see we've got a nice shine on there, so it's not very reflective like a mirror would be. I could have used some tape or whatever, but because of the shape, they've got like a convex shape to them. I didn't want to have the tape wrinkling, so we can cut these off. Can we get rid of the sprue? I'm just going to remove See, this has got the sprue nib on the bottom, which is a nice touch. Thank you, Airfix. There you go. That one there, that one there. So just sand away that sprue nib there. There we are, we're good to go. Right. So we can get these glued on. We need to make sure that we get them, come on, go around. We need to make sure we get them in the right orientation. So with the sprue nib being on the bottom, what we can do is make sure the sprue nib is lined up with the slot. So we've got the mark there. In fact, I think a better way to do this would be, let's get those apart. I think the better way to do this would be to actually fit these to the grill. These tiny things are tiny parts. Okay, so this one is 34, so this one is for the left side. Where is the grill? There it is. So that one is going to go in there, like so. So what I'm going to do is just put a drop of extra thin into there and then fit this headlamp support into there, making sure the orientation and everything is correct. So I grab my tweezers and give it a little nudge, give it a little push in. Okay, so we got that's in there, we got the little pip on the bottom facing downwards. So we can get the other one off. Again, throw the sprue away. As you can see, we're getting rid of all the sprues now, which is cool. And then once again, on this side, drop of extra thin. And you may be wondering why I'm doing it like this and not doing it as per the instructions. It's because it's a lot easier to handle these parts like this than it is to handle the whole thing. Okay, so that's gone in now. There we are, that's them on. I'm going to make sure that one's not quite horizontal. And then what we can do is, with our extra thin, is just run some around. And that'll go in and sort out any seams. I may actually go around this Mr. Surfacer because it looks like we've got a bit of a gap around the bottom of that one. Okay, so that's those on. And then what we can do is fit our headlamps. As I say, because you can look on here, excuse my nails guys, you can see on here we've got a lump and then on the side there's a recess, so it's obvious which side they go on. Now I want to do some more cleanup on this one because I can still see a bit of a sprue nib on there. We've got the other one here. That one looks fine. So we can grab this with some tweezers. Hopefully it won't fly off. So that one is going to be the right hand side. So drop of cement into there and then drop that onto there like so. Make sure it's vertical and then do the same for the other one. And then once we've got them in place we can jiggle with them and get them the same. So put a drop of glue in there, just a small drop, and then we can plonk that one onto there like so. And then obviously we can manoeuvre and manipulate and get them nice and square. Get them looking all even and straight, having them so they're the same like this and from the top. And no doubt once they're dry we'll be able to flex with them then as well. So that's the headlights in place on the grille. And there we go. So happy how they look. So once we're happy, just another little drop of extra thin just to make sure everything's good. And then we're going to leave those to dry solid. Again, leave them for a good 12-24 hours so they go nice and hard. Then here we have these side lights, and as I say, I've left the sprue attached, and that's so it makes it a lot easier to fit. So we can put them down in there, okay, and then a drop of extra thin. And I'm applying the glue afterwards because I don't want, once again, I don't want it to be oozing out. And now we can get that side light into the right position. And then we can drop this one in as well. Drop of extra thin around it. Just make sure it's all square and facing forward. Something else I've just noticed with the sprue on there, it makes it a lot easier to make sure they're sitting in the right orientation and everything. So there we go, so that can sit like that and be left to dry along with our painted back end. And we've got our blackout lights there which are going to get glued into there, and we've got our mirrors there which are going to go onto the actual cab, so we can put those back in the box out of the way. This framework here, this bull bar thing, is going to go on the front. I think we'll fit that after we fit the grille, so that can go in after the grille. And there we are. We're not going to be using them, so they can go in the bin because they're horrible. And we have these ready to go on when we're ready. And what I am going to do with these is just grab them with a pair of tweezers. Just clean off where the sprue nibs were. There we go. So as I say, they'll be ready to go on once that's all dry and everything. And there we are. That looks lovely, doesn't it? That looks lovely. Right, there's lovely, see? Right, so we'll let all that dry and then I'll see you tomorrow. Well, not tomorrow for you, but tomorrow for me. Right then guys, it's been 3 days since I last spoke, so here we go. So here's the chassis. As you know, we put those little side lights on. We've still got the sprue attached. I'll show you how to do that now. We've got the back all painted. I've done the steel down the sides, and that's had a couple of coats of hairspray, so I'm going to be spraying that green in a minute. Remember when I left you last time, we did the headlamps, and they're all nice and dry now and solid, so we can fit these blackout lights to the fronts. So we can just put those on like so, and they do have a lovely little location nub on the back, which is a benefit for these but a disadvantage for the other ones because it shows up. Then I'm going to get a straight edge. I'm just going to lay a straight edge across these and get them to level up. Okay, so drop of extra thin, tiny little drop in the bottom, little tiny drop on that one on the bottom so it won't be seen, and then just check once again with our straight edge. They're nice and level, and there we go. Drop of extra thin around there, drop of extra thin around there, and that will glue them in nicely and solidly. So once again we can leave those to dry, and that's a good way of making sure those blackout lights are horizontal. So with these here, we need to take a nice pair of cutters, and these have been on a couple of days, so they're nice and dry. We get in as close as we can to the part and just cut the sprue nib off. The reason I did this, if you remember, it enabled me to hold the part and put it in and position it. It's a lot easier than trying to hold this tiny little side light in your hand, get it all lined up and have it all trimmed and everything. And then I'm going to get a 400 grit, here it is, I wonder where it was, 400 grit sanding stick, and just very lightly sand over the top until that nib disappears, until the sprue nib disappears. just like so. Don't use anything too coarse because it will pick up on it and snap it off. But that is a very good little way for the newer modelers out there. When you're struggling with lots of tiny parts, like if you're doing a mini art kit, which as a beginner you shouldn't be, if you're doing a mini art kit, a million parts where there could have been one, and there's lots and lots of tiny parts, and it's often a very good way, like with little grab handles and stuff like that. Cut them off the sprue, leave the sprue attached, fit them all, and then you can cut them off and sand them all together. So there we are. So that's our, I'm just going to get a sponge. It's a 1000 grit sponge. Very carefully indeed, just go over the top of them just to clean them up, and then just to make sure they look good, tiny drop of extra thin over the top, just brush it on like so, and then we'll be able to see when that dries how good they look. And if we need a bit more sanding, we'll do a bit more sanding, but that saves you having to fiddle around with them, trying to hold them in tweezers, and then they ping off into the carpet somewhere, you know. And it's just a good little tip for newer modelers out there. So that's that done. Right, so I'm now going to concentrate on getting this rear end painted. In fact, what I might do is go on and get this, no, I won't get that glued in now. So I'll go away and get this painted. I'm going to do it with the same paint as I've been using all the way through for the main colour. This is the SCC 15 Olive Drab, AKRC037, and with this one, because we're doing some chipping, because it's going over hairspray, I've used the Tamiya X20A thinners. If you use any stronger acrylic thinners, it makes it a lot more difficult or nigh on impossible to chip. So we use the Tamiya acrylic thinners. I believe you can also use IPA. I'll have to do some experiments. Perhaps we'll make a video on that. So I'm going to get this sprayed now, and then I'll come back. Okay, that's painted green. So we'll leave that now, and then we can do some chipping on it in a couple of hours. And then I also, with the extra paint I had left over in the airbrush, I just went round and painted the mud guards on the bottom. So the bottom's all green now. I did round those steps as well. So we're ready now to glue the body on, really. Before I do that, I am going to glue these hinges on rather than have to handle the body with the chassis and everything attached. And also it gives me something to get into this video. So nice pair of sharp snips. We can see on here, they were telling us to put these on way back and then fit the doors. And you can imagine having those open doors on there doing all this handling, it would have just got broken. So that's why I changed the build sequence around it. That's why I think about what I'm doing and how I'm going to make it more sensible. You can follow me, or you can do it, you know, follow the instructions. Either way, you're going to end up with the same results. I just think doing it my way, you're going to end up with it's a lot safer rather than breaking things off. So we've got to get these hinges on. So we've got 21 is on the right hand side and 22 is on the left. And as you can see, we've got 21 and 22. So if I take a 22 off from here, I'm going to cut it nice and close with my snips, nippers, and then hold that in my fingers, and with that 400 grit sanding stick, seems we used on those side lights, just a quick swipe over and that should be enough. So this was a 22, I'm going to get some tweezers I think. So this was a 22, and these have got like a little lug on the back that's going to fit into a little hole in the side of the body here. So that's all pretty self-explanatory. So I'm just going to grab a drop of extra thin onto there, just to kind of tack it and then get that into that hole, like so. We gotta hope we don't knock these off. So we need another drop of glue on there because that glue had all dried out before I put it on. It's sometimes good to put a little bit too much glue on bits like this, and it really gets in there and lets it really weld in and become part of it rather than a separate piece glued on. So we'll do the same again. Just cut that off, grab that in with fingers, a couple of swipes with the stick just to get rid of any sprue nib that's there, and then drop of extra thin on the back. I'm literally just putting a tiny drop on here just to give me something so it just tacks as it goes on and doesn't just fall off. You may also notice I've removed the paint. As you can see, these are very fiddly, but unfortunately for the newer modelers out there, some, you know, some really fiddly bits and pieces, I would say leave them off, you know, in a cockpit or something. But here you need these because they're such a definite part of the body, and also you need something to hang your doors on. Having said that, if you're doing your model with the doors closed, you may be able to glue the doors closed first and then put these on after, and then you'll have the doors and the body to glue them to. So that's those on now, and then what will happen there is that door will sit on top of those hinges. It's a perfect fit, but you can see how weak it's going to be. You know, you really want to be gluing those on absolutely last and then putting the model down and not touching it again. So if you're doing a diorama, I would put them on after you've done your diorama base. So I'll get these two cut off, get these glued on, and then I'll be back. Okay, so basically I've placed the grill in place. I haven't glued it, so I can still remove that. And what I'm going to do, I've glued the radiator in place. I don't quite know why that's there because you can't see anything. But basically with this front radiator grill, I'm going to fit it in place like this. It goes down in there, it sort of goes vertically into a slot in the front, and then there is actually a slot that it goes in here. Where is it? There, it's because the camera's on. Here we go once again, it's messing about because the camera's on. There is a slot down in there that it goes into. There we are. You can see there, and then underneath you can see the tab there in the tan plastic. So I could glue it after as well. I'm not going to glue it now because I might want to have a bit of manoeuvrability to get a good joint with the bonnet when that goes in. I think we will get a good joint, but I want to make sure it's a really nice joint. We haven't got any big gaps or anything. So what I can do is sort of get the bonnet glued down and then tape the grill to the bonnet and then glue it at the bottom down there, and that'll make sure everything's all nicely glued in place. But basically, I've just looked in the box and this is all we have left. We've got that, we've got the photo etch to do, which I'm going to show you in a minute. That's it. We're pretty much done. So we've got this bull bar thing to go on the front here, but before I put that in place, I want to do the photo etch. So I'm going to get the radiator out of the way because it's going to make it easier for me, and I think it's going to make it easier for you to see. And then basically all the construction is finished. Once we've glued the cab to the chassis, fitted the bonnet, fitted the bull bar and mirrors, it's done. So what we're going to do, we're going to put this PE in place now. And the reason I'm going to do it now is that I can get there and I can show you without trying to hold the whole thing and everything. So photo etch is basically, for the newer modelers out there, photo etch is basically very thin brass. And as you can see, it's quite shiny, it's quite reflective. So one of the first things I always do is to give it a key. A lot of people say give it a wash. You can do. You don't always need to, especially with big parts like this. And just come on the back with a hard sanding stick, and what I'm doing is just scoring up the back, and it's basically giving some key, because we're going to use super glue to glue this in place, but it basically gives it a key. You can use white glue if you want to, but I prefer to use super glue, and it basically gives the super glue something to grab hold of, and I've just bent that one there, which is what you shouldn't do when you're sanding this down. So there we are. So I haven't ruined it, I'll get it back, don't worry. But basically that's what we're doing. So I'm glad that happened in a way, because it's showing you what not to do. And I went too rough and I sanded it and I caught the edge of it and I bent it. So be very careful. What you often should do is just put the sanding stick down and just pull it across like that, pull it across the face. But I'll straighten that out now and then I'll come back. Okay, so straighten that out, that's all good now. Right, so first things first, when we want to cut the photo etch off the fret, there's a million different ways to skin a cat. This is my way of doing it. You need something hard. What you don't want to do, I'll show you on the fret itself. If you use something soft, when you push down, what happens is you will bend. I can't do it on that bit, it's too thick. There we go. You can see that where I've pushed down, if you look just next to the left of that number 4, you can see there's like a bend in the surface. So that's what happens if you cut on a soft surface. So you need something hard. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, is cut this out. Now, the way I do it is with a round blade. I don't use a pointed blade, because if you use a pointed blade, you tend to cut with the tip. So you use the end, 1, 2, 3, and every time you've used the same point. Whereas with a radius blade like this, you can get the blade, cut it, touch it up against the side of the part, and then just roll the blade over. Okay, touch it at the side and roll the blade over. Again, touch it up, roll it over. Do the same here, up against the side, roll it over, and then the same there. There we go, you can see the part has come off. So now we've got this piece of photo etched brass, which is very thin and very flimsy, and we've got little tiny frets on it. So what we need to do now is grab something like a pair of tweezers, hold the part, and try and support it as good as you can over the whole area. And then I'm going to use a 400 grit sanding stick to sand, to take away the fret, the bits that are sticking out. It's almost like cleaning up sprue nibs. Just very gently hold it nice and tight in the tweezers. Just very gently sand it to remove those bits that are sticking out. I don't think there was any top and bottom, was there? We'll just have a look. We'll just give it a quick swipe anyway, just to see. Okay, now some people will suggest to you that when you're doing photo etch you need to get some files. These are great. These are diamond taper files from Infini, and you can get them from Premium Hobbies. They're absolutely awesome. But I find with diamond files, with brass photo etch, the trouble is they tend to be, no matter how fine they are, they tend to be a little bit coarse, and what they will do is pick up and drag the photo etch. So I prefer to use a sanding stick, particularly on brass. However, if you're doing something like a Tamiya kit, where inevitably the photo etch is made of stainless steel, then it's a lot harder and you tend to tear the sanding sticks, so that's when you want to be using a file. So we've got our photo etch piece off now, we've got the back all done, all roughed up, and then we're basically going to place this on here where it's telling us to put it, and you can see that that's going down like that and it fits on there, but as we can see it's not a particularly good fit. It's got a bit of play in it, but it's good enough, okay, because it's going to have a decal going down over it, red paint, all sorts of stuff. So what we're going to do is get this in place. So now we need to glue it down, and what we need to do is use super glue. Now there are lots and lots of different super glues. You can get one like this if you're in the UK from Screwfix, no nonsense high strength super glue, and it's great for general work. The only trouble is with most super glues like this one and this one here, you can see it sets in 5 to 10 seconds. So you put it on, bang, it's gone. So you want something a little bit slower. Now this one here, this is a new to us product from Premium Hobbies, VMS, absolutely amazing. This one is slow. The problem is with slow super glues, they tend to be quite thick. And having thick super glue is not always good when you're trying to apply the part and then run the super glue underneath it. So you want something fairly thin. There's this one here which is for PE, but I think it's quite thick. It's a little bit too thick for my liking. This one here I like. They do these two black ones. Black CA glue, I think it has like a rubber compound in it, so it's sort of a bit more flexible, but it will appear that all of these are quite flexible. That is the other trouble with super glues like this. They're very, very brittle. So with tiny parts, you just touch them and they break off. Whereas with these, they have a bit of flex in them. So we've got here the black, and then we've got the black thin. And I'm going to use the black thin because I want it to capillary under, as you'll see in a minute. And the beauty of having the black is the fact that you can see it. Now with the clear, obviously you can't see it, but with the black you can see where it is. So you can go around with a cotton bud, rub it off, go around with a sanding stick, scrape it off with a knife, whatever. If you've got any super glue there, you'll see it rather than find it after you put your primer on. So we've got that part there, that piece of photo etch there. And as you can see, as I say, we've got a little bit of play in it, but having it there like that, it's absolutely fine. It's good enough. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go around with some Mr. Surfacer after it's on there and then remove the excess with a cotton bud with alcohol, and that will make it look more sort of part of this rather than having a separate ring around it. I'm glad they've put it in there because it's great to have. They probably could have moulded it on there, but hey ho. So, very unusual to find photo in an Airfix kit. Very unusual. So anyway, we're going to just put some of this onto here. So this is the Flexi 5K CA Black Thin. Alright, now this is a Pringles lid. If you live in the UK, you get Pringles in the long tubs. I think you get Pringles all over the world now, don't you? This is the lid. It's ideal for super glue because the super glue doesn't really stick to it, and then when it's dry you can just peel it off. You can see on there where I've had super glue before, you just get a knife under it and flick it off and then you can reuse it. So what I'm going to do is use a knife. A lot of people talk about using cocktail sticks and applicators and all that. In this situation, I'm going to use a knife, and I'm going to get a cotton bud ready. Okay, so I have a cotton bud here at my side. What I'm going to do, I'm looking at this photo etch now, and it's sort of a bit curved. So I'm going to take it off. It's sort of a little bit, you can see it's a bit curved towards the top, which is part of the process of the photo etch. What they're doing is they're removing material from one side when they etch it. So it obviously, the part will bend because it's taking tension out of one side. So we'll just give that a little tweak down just to try and get it a bit flatter. Alright, just drop that on there again. There we are. So now it's a bit flatter. It's not perfect, but it's there. So I'm going to get a knife. I'm going to grab a cocktail stick. So what I can do now is just dip the knife in the super glue. It's a bit too much on there. And then I'm going to hold this front edge down. And then I hope you can see what I'm doing. In fact, if I zoom you in a bit, bloody fireworks still. It's November the 6th and we've still got, we have fireworks from the middle of October. I'm sick of them. Poor little Jess is scared stiff. Picked up something on there that I didn't want. So what I can do now is just hold this down. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. And I'm just going to let the knife capillary the super glue underneath the part. And now you can see, hold it up, you can see there the black super glue, and that's the beauty of having the black, is you can see it. Okay, and then with a cotton bud, squeeze the end to get it a bit pointed. Just wipe away any excess. And it's that easy. Okay, now this is the other reason for using the black. We can see that on top of there, we can see that just to the top, there's some glue on the top. So I can get a knife and I can just scrape that off. Job done. So I can come along now to the back with the knife, put the knife under here. Can you see what I'm doing? I think you can. Let the glue capillary off the knife onto the part. I think that went under, didn't it? No, it didn't. I think the glue's probably been on the knife too long and got a bit set. There we are. Much too much glue on there, but it's not a problem. So we can push the part down and then we can get a cotton bud over the top and remove the excess just like that. And we can see the cotton bud has actually pushed the part down and it's removed the excess super glue. Okay, so we can do the same now on the side. Just get some in the side, let it capillary under. We'll do one side at a time, not be greedy. Yeah, and then we'll do the same on the other side. Now if you're working on ship models with lots of tiny bits of photo etching doing stuff like this, I would recommend using a thin CA. Perhaps hold the part in place with a bit of blue tack or a bit of tape or something, and then use thin CA like this, and the thin CA will wick off the blade faster than you can say Hail Mary. So there we are. You can see on there now we've got the part glued all the way around. It's nicely sealed down. Let's bring you back out. It's nicely sealed down and it's all good. Now one other thing you can do, you can get one of these. This is called a glass fibre pencil. That's the RS part number from RS Online if you want to get one. And then you can just rub over this with a fiberglass pencil and it will clean it all up. Just like so. But these things are horrible because you can see on there's loads of little glass fibres and they are nasty. You don't want them in your lungs. So not something I'd recommend for the younger modelers, but something maybe you could consider as an adult if you can trust yourself to use it appropriately. I'm just going to scrape away that excess glue from there. And there we are. Now the other way you can do it is put the glue on first and then drop the part on. The only trouble with that, you haven't got long to position it. So you could then always use white glue if you want to. I don't like using white glue on photo etch. I don't like the rubberiness of it. So I'm going to get the other one on, and then I'll come back and we'll do that little, we've got a part to put on there, and we've got the little bit to go on the front fender. Okay, so they're both on. They're both on there now. I've got that one straightened out that I bent and everything. So that's all good. Right. The other thing I've done, I've got a soft sponge, sanding stick, and just gone around afterwards just to make sure there's no excess super glue. As I say, that's the beauty of having the black one. Quite how you'd manage on black plastic, I don't know, but invariably kits these days aren't black plastic, they're generally grey. So I've got these parts off. This is the badge, whatever you call it, badge holder for the front fender, and then this is the one that goes on the roof for the Red Cross. So I've got them off the fret, but I thought I'd clean them up on camera so you can see how I'm doing this. Again, I'm going to use my 400 grit stick, hold it in the tweezers. I'm not going to go across because I don't want to bend it. I want it to stay nice and flat. So just drop it on the other side of the board. Okay, and then just, hold on, I think there's 4 on here. So just gently, I'm not putting any pressure on, I'm just letting the sanding stick do the work. Just gently removing this fret. I'm also not holding it too tight with the tweezers because I don't want to bend it, I want it to stay nice and flat. Okay, so there's that one. You can see those bits are all gone now. If you feel around with your finger, if there's any sharp edges or anything there, you'll feel it. Do the same on this one. This one's going to go up on the roof. There's a song about that, isn't there? Up on the roof. Again, going along the length of the brass rather than around, rather than going side to side. If you must go side to side, hold the part very, very close to the edge like that, and then you're safe to go that way. But don't hold it like that and then try and sand, because you'll probably, the sanding stick will probably pick up on the nib and grab it, and you have a bent part. So it's all great having parts nice and bent and everything, but getting them back straight again is a nightmare. So there we are. Right. And then this one here is going to be a completely different story. Now we've got sprue nibs. I think there's 3 points on here. So there's one there. So I'm going to hold it local to the point, and then I'm going to sand along the length. And then turn it over back like that. And sand along the length. One other thing I've just thought of, you can kind of almost feel it when you're sanding a sprue nib, sorry, the nib from the fret. You can kind of feel that it's rough under your sanding stick, but then as soon as it's smooth, it just you can't feel anything. I don't know if you're able to hear it here. When I do this one, you may be able to hear it sort of flicking off of that nib, and then it'll go quiet. No. So that's that. So that's that done. So that's that part. And it's telling us here, as you can see, we need to bend it. So we've got to bend the 2 ends up, and we've got to bend the top back, as you can see on there. So what I'm going to do is bend the top back first, and we can see on the back here, we have, I don't know if you can see that, but on the back we have fold lines, and on the front we have like rivet holes, bolt holes or whatever. So what I can do is with a pair of tweezers, because it's so small, come up to that fold line, just give it a bend. I'm not sure what angle it's going to be yet, so I'm just going to leave it like that. That's sort of 60 degrees or something. And then this one here is going to bend up like so, and this one here is going to bend up like so. Okay, so the long one goes at the bottom and the short one goes at the top. So what we want to do is when we fit this, we want the actual sign, the billboard thing, to be vertical. So if I drop that in place on there without it falling over, this is where doing camera work gets tricky. When doing fine stuff like this, it gets really tricky. Right, so it's going to go in behind there and it's going to keep falling over. Now I'm looking on the instructions, and what it's showing me is that it goes on that plate behind the bumper, not the actual bumper itself, and it's just inboard of that outboard bolt. So what we're going to do is go just inboard of that outboard bolt there, put it down, and we can see that straight away we need to sharpen up the bend on the bottom. So I can give that a little push. Doesn't want to know it. As I say, it's very difficult on camera. You'll find it much easier. I'm making it look difficult because I'm trying to do it on camera so you can see what I'm doing, whereas I would normally be not in this position. So that needs to be nearly right angles there. I think it might be easier if I turn this around. We put that down like that. And now we can see it's much better. So what I'm going to do is, now you can see where I've got the radiator out of the way. I can come in from the side and put it in position. So I'm just going to put a drop of glue on the bottom of here. Okay, so always look to see you've got some glue, because quite often you'll dip your brass in your super glue and there'll be nothing on there. And I'm just going to place that in position just inboard of that bolt. Okay, don't press it down. If you don't press it down, it won't stick. And then once you've got it in position where you want it, just press it down like so, and it should stay there. And the beauty of this VMS stuff, it doesn't dry instantly, so you've got a little bit of time to play with it. Now they say on their website you should give it 24 hours, which it seems a little over the top. See, there's some take 5 seconds. There we go. So that's nearly vertical, so I'm just going to push that over a bit on the top, just give it a little tweak over, and then we want to make sure that when we've got it on it's not twisted, so it's twisted that way, so we're going to twist it back round. That's gone over. There we go. So now you can see that we've got the brass is on there, yeah, and it's kind of vertical on the front. I'm going to bend it a little bit more just to get it a bit more vertical. Okay, so I should be able to just hold that bottom. Is the glue dry enough that I can pull it? Yes, it is. So if I push this top down, it will sort of act like a leg joint. And if I push the top down, it will push the front out as I push the top down. So there we go, that's better. So now it's more vertical, as you can see. We need to make sure it's nice and straight. We need to make sure it's vertical in that plane, vertical in that plane, and pull it straight and forward and back in that plane. It's just got a little bit of a twist in it, so I'm just going to give it a little bit more of a kick round, just like so. There we go. And then I can grab something like a cocktail stick, or I've got a little pointed tool here. And then we can just put some glue into there, and hopefully it'll run underneath. And then just push it down with the tweezers, and then cotton bud. And then just coming there with the tweezers, just make sure it's gone down nice and solid. There we go. And there we are. So that, my friends, is that glued in place. So we can leave that for a little while to go dry, and then we can add this one to the front. As we know, the back is already done. Now the rivets, the bolts, need to be vertical, because obviously those bolts in there on that piece are bolting it to that bracket, so we need to make sure that it's vertical. So we're going to put that on there like that, and it literally goes top to bottom. So what we can do here is just grab some super glue onto there, and then I'm going to get a cotton bud, wipe it off. The reason I'm doing that, it will leave a tiny little bit of super glue on the surface, and it will clean it. It will make sure that it's all good and clean, because I've been handling it and holding it and all sorts. Okay, so I scrape that super glue off of there. And it only works on big parts, it won't work on small parts. But basically now what I've got is I know I've got a clean surface, and I know that glue will bite on that really, really well. So we can put some glue on here now. Just like so. Grab our piece that's going to go on here. Make sure we've got the bolts dead vertical in line with the bracket, so we'll put the bottom like that in line with the bracket. It's twisting in the tweezers. So we can put the bottom like that, put the top like that. And there we go, that's gone down. Make sure it's facing forwards. It's got a bit of a twist in it for some reason. There we are. And this is where this VMS Flexi super glue really comes into play, because something like that, which has just got those two tiny little contact points, would be very, very flimsy and break away. But you can see I can push this and knock it about, and it's staying. And it's not even, I mean, like I say, the website says 24 hours curing. That hasn't had 24 hours. So there we go. Something else you may be wondering about is the priming of it. There are all sorts of metal primers. There is a VMS one that I've got here, this one here, and you brush it on. So we'll try that. Basically what you do is just brush it on and leave it to dry. It's very, very thin, so it brushes on very thin. So we'll try that one in a minute, and then when we come to paint it, we'll see how it works. But basically, if you don't put something on your photo etch, the paint will flake off, scratch off really easily. I normally use the Mr. Hobby metal prep, which is here, metal primer, which you thin with thinners, their own thinners, and spray on. But I'm not that keen on it. I'm not that keen on anything. I've never found anything really that works very well with etched brass. So you pay your money, it takes your choice. Now the final piece of brass we're going to use is on here. It's going on the centre of the roof. It's going to go onto here, right there. So the first thing I'm going to do is scrape away some paint so that we're gluing to plastic, because otherwise all you're doing is gluing to the PE to the paint, sorry. So I'm going to sand that, actually, sand that to get rid of all the paint from that front edge. There we are. We've got a bit of a lip on there that's going to glue to. That's okay. And if you notice on here, again we have what's depicted as bolts. So they'll be across the centre, so those are going to run parallel across the centre there. So we need to make sure we get it dead centre and in position. So I've just noticed I've got some nibs on there that need to be cleaned up. So how am I going to make sure I get it dead centre? You could come along and measure it out with tape and all that if you want to. You could make marks, put pencil lines and everything. But what I'm going to do, and I haven't done this off camera, so this is the first time I've done it, I'm going to measure the diameter of this. This is my digital caliper, which is a very handy tool to have. So that's 5.5 millimeters in diameter, and across the width across these straps here is 45.5 millimeters. So that means I've got 20 millimeters per side. If I measure in 20 millimeters per side and make a line, then that means we should be pretty much nearly there. So if I come in 20 millimeters per side from the outside edge, and then get a pencil and make a line there, can hardly see. I can just about see it, so I doubt you guys can see it, but if you're doing your own, you'll see it on the paint. I'm going to hold that like that on the outside edge, and then make a line so I can see it. I don't know if you can see it, but I can just make it out. You can make it out there. You can see the lead on the paint. So we've got a mark in there now, but we could really do it by eye, to be honest. It's not that difficult. So we can hold that in the tweezers and get it in position by looking at our pencil lines, and we should have it dead center. That should be good enough, shouldn't it? So what we'll do is we'll get some super glue on the back of here. I can hear the rain outside. It's absolutely pouring down, which is great news because it means it'll probably put people off firing their stupid little bloody fireworks. Oh yeah, it's absolutely pouring down. There we go. So we've got that now. It's centered there. And there we are. That's going to be very flimsy because it's only stuck along this tiny edge along the front. You can see if you catch the top of it, it'll flick off easily. But hopefully with this VMS Flexi glue, it should be a lot better. Now if you really want to, what you could do here is come along with I have here a glue applicator. You could use anything thin. I'm just going to make sure we don't have any excess glue on here. And then I should be able to get a drop of glue and run it in behind there, and hopefully it'll capillary down and give us a bit of a buttress to give us a stronger joint. Remove the excess glue from there. There we go. So that should give us a stronger joint. When it's done, it's gone down in behind it, but it hasn't, I can't see the glue from the top or the side, but it's gone down to sort of form a sort of half moon shaped buttress against it, so it should make it a lot stronger. So there we go. So that's in the middle, nice and horizontal, job done. Right, so that is that. Now we need to look at getting this front end finished off together. I'm going to get this bull bar in. We'll get the radiator grill in loosely, just like so. It's really awkward to get in here. In like that, into the slot at the front. There we go. So that's the radiator grill in. We've got our mirrors there, which I've masked up. I made some masking tape the same as I did before, sort of 2mm wide and 4mm long, I think it was. So we'll mask those mirrors up. That piece of photo etch on there would probably be for another version. It could be for the back. I think it's the same size. There's already a disc molded on. Yeah, we don't need to use that. I don't think we need to use that. Tell you what, we'll put it on because it's got that nice bolt detail. So I'm going to get that one fitted and then I'll come back. Okay, so that's on now. You can see nice and straight. I can report this black Flexi 5K CA black thin is very good. I put a drop on there, put the part in place, and I had it slightly off. That's okay. I thought, you know, after a few seconds I got in there with a blade and it took me a lot of effort to get it off. And then removing the glue that was on there was even more difficult. So I've used the slow this time, which is obviously a clear. You can see there's a tiny little drop of it there by the end of my finger. And that gave me plenty of time to play with it and move it and get it the right shape. So there we go. So the black thin is amazing stuff. Really pleased with that. I have been using the MIG ammo a lot, but I think I prefer this one, to be honest. I really do. So, and it's very, very strong. And also, I mean, I can pull on that and play with it and it's not coming off. Famous last words. And then I'm just going to, just to give that a little bit of a clean up, I'm just going to scrape away up the sides of there and then a sanding stick around the edges just to make that look a bit prettier. We've got our little brass plate. And you can see there, if you are new to the hobby, this is the beauty of photo etch. You have an accurate looking thin metal plate in real life, which is what it is. It's a thin metal plate, and you can't make plastic that thin that's got any strength to it. So yeah, really, really nice. Glad Airfix did that. So Nice touch. These frames here, as I say, they probably could have been moulded on, but you know, that could have been moulded on, that could have been moulded on, but you'd have had a great big lump of plastic behind it here, so it's nice to have that as a piece of photo etch as well. So all in all, really happy. Let's get this bull bar thing done, and I think then we can start thinking about getting the body and the chassis together. So we're just going to trim these off. Remember, I said to you a few minutes ago, to me it was a couple of days ago, there are ejector pin marks in there. So I went in with some filler and filled them in. Okay, so we got that there, we've got that there, and then we're going to get this one here off the sprue nib. Remember to clean up your seams so you have no visible seams. So that's that all done. There we go. So what I'm going to do is glue this. The way this goes in is with the loops facing forward, so I'm going to glue this into one side. Plenty of glue, get a nice good solid weld. Oops. There we go, we have a nice good solid weld on there. And the reason I've done that is so that I can basically come along. Just going to test fit this in there, make sure it fits in that slot. I can't hold it without it just flicking around on me. Come on, stay vertical. Let's try with this one. It looks like it's not going to fit into that slot. Right, I'm going to get this radiator grid out of the way again. Glad I didn't glue it in place. We'll get that out of the way. That'll give us plenty more room to work with. So is that going to fit into that slot in there or not? No. Well, it does, but you have to really push it in. So I'll leave it in there. I'll just get some extra thin in there and then just give it a little wiggle. There we go. And on this one, I think what I'll do is get my knife and just shave a little slither off the side of it, just to make it a bit easier to go in. There we go. It's probably just the paint that's affecting it. So can we get in with a pair of tweezers and get this one in place? I hope we can. Let's put my finger there to stop it rocking back. Wow, does not want to go in. There we go, it's gone in. Put that bar over and into that hole. And then I'm going to put some extra thin in there and some extra thin down here. Push that down in. And then as we can see, it's not quite vertical either side, so it needs to just bow out a little bit either way. So we can tweak all that while the glue's still soft. And there we are. Make sure they're both in the same plane that way. And there we go. Another little look from the front, make sure everything's all good. They sort of sit just bowed out a little bit, not quite vertical. Not sure if that's correct or not, but that's how it is on this model. And then that radiator grill is going to go down in there and sit in that slot at the front. How many times has that radiator grill been on off? 50! There we are. So we can eye that up now with the radiator grill and we can see that we've got an even gap either side and everything's nice and straight. So there we are. Right. So there we go, that's that together. So all that remains now is to get the body onto the chassis. So if we look at this, the contact areas we've got are here. We have these 4 lug areas here, and we have these 4 lugs that are going to go in there. So what we're going to do is grab our knife and scrape away the paint from there. And then we are going to scrape some paint away from the top of here. And this is to make sure we get a nice solid glue joint. Okay, and then we've also got these lugs here. That area of the chassis is going to sit on top, or the floor is going to sit on top of the chassis. So what we will do, they will sit in those forward holes there. It's okay, I've already checked. So I'm going to remove some paint from there. And that should be enough to give us a nice solid fit. So what we need to do is offer the body up to the chassis and make sure we don't break anything off. And we can see here, I'm afraid I can't show you on camera because I can't get the camera in there, but we've got those 4 pins in the bottom of the body going into these 4 slots in the chassis. We've got the mudguards there falling around everything. We can see there that it all sort of falls together once everything lines up. You can see we've got some springiness there, so the body wants to actually pull away from the chassis. So what we need to do is clamp it. So I think I can get away with flexing that exhaust. Or can I get a clothes peg in there? Yes, I can. Get a clothes peg in there and clamp that to the floor. There we go. And I may be able to do the same on this side. Clamp that through the driver's seat. Yep, so that's all clamped in place, and then with the back appears to be staying in position. I may see if I can get one of my big Rebel clamps. That's going to break the prop shaft if I do that. If I can get a clamp in behind there. Without breaking anything. Oops, I don't want to grip the axle. Here we go. There we go. Just want to hold it in place. It doesn't need to be grunched down. And now I can get my extra thin and I can come inside the chassis and put a drop into each of those 4 contact areas, and that'll capillary around them, and we should get a nice solid joint in there. And now these areas here at the front where those lugs are, we're going to put some glue in there and let that capillary around. I know you probably can't see what I'm doing, I'm sorry, but that's unfortunately one of the issues when it comes to large assemblies like this. You can't really see what I'm doing, but basically I've put glue. Where's a pointy stick? There we go. I've put glue. There's 4 points there. There's 2 on each side here. One there, and then down in here you've got those 2 lugs. I've put glue in them. So that's all held into place now. Now we can see that on the front it's all floating about. I'm going to leave it like that because I don't know how it's going to want to fit together when we come to put the bonnet and the grille and everything. So we can leave all that and then we can clamp it all up, tape it up, whatever, when this back end is all dried up. Now here, we can see at the back here we have contact between the body and the chassis, but I didn't scrape the paint away, so I'm just going to get my knife. I can't get in there, so what I'm going to do is have to put extra thin in there and hope that the extra thin will burn its way through that paint. And then when I come back to this, we will do the chipping on the step at the back. That's what I haven't forgotten. I've also got to do Mr. Surfacer around these vents at the top. But I'm going to leave that now to dry overnight. I'm going to put some more glue in there. Yes, I am. It's just to make sure we've got a really good joint and the glue is capillary around everywhere that it can go. There we go. Struggling to get the brush in there without taking the paint off the exhaust. A bit more in there, a bit more in there, and another drop in there, ba-dumph, and another drop in there, ba-dumph, just like that. And hopefully now that will all weld itself in place while it's all clamped down and all be good. So there we go, and we can see now. Let's have a look how this bonnet fits actually. So you can see now why I didn't glue the grille. Look, I could have glued the grille in position there and we'd have had a massive gap, so I can leave that now. That's how that's going to go. We've got a nice realistic gap around the bottom of the grille. We're going to clamp that up because we can see I can pull all that together. So we'll get a clamp on that when we glue the bonnet in. And go from there. In fact, I will probably do that off camera. I will just clamp. No, I'll do it now. I think I'll do it now. No, I'm not. I'm going to let the back body dry off first and then we can pull the front around. I don't want to put too much pressure on everything with clamps and that because it's all getting a bit flimsy. But you can see that we are starting to get the... Well, it's a bit late if we're starting to get, because all we've got left now are these two mirrors. That's it. And the model is finished. So I'm going to call that a day for this one. And I'm going to call this video finishing the build, even though we've still got to put the bonnet on and put the mirrors on. But we'll put the mirrors on after we've done the painting and everything, because they're just going to get knocked off. So they're on the sprue, they're ready to go, and what we'll do is we'll paint them, and then when they're on the model we can just go in with the brush and just touch up the sprue nibs where they are on there. But they're basically going to fit up under here. So happy with that, how it's all gone. And in part 14 is it, or part 15? Is this 15? I can't remember now. But the next part of this one plus one, we will be getting the, well, not get the mirrors, we'll get the bonnet on, get that clamped up, and then we will look at getting a coat of paint on it, and then we'll be getting some clear coat on it, then we'll be looking at decals, and then we'll be looking at weathering. If you notice, I'm leaving the wheels off because I don't want to have to mask the wheels. The way it is at the moment, I can get tape in there, tape around there, whatever, and it doesn't really matter because everything's green. It doesn't really matter if we get any overspray. Here we're going to have to do some nice careful masking, but I'll show you how I'm going to go about that, and then we'll go from there. So there we are. And we mustn't forget to paint the doors. So thanks for watching. As you can see, we have what is looking like a lovely little Katie. So yeah, really pleased with how this has come out. Beautiful job by Airfix. Really nice. I mean, really pleased with it. The only complaint I have about this kit, the whole kit, was the headlights. So, and I wish they kind of perhaps moulded these into the doors or something if they could. It's going to be a very flimsy joint. But then if they made a great big thick joint that glued in there, I'd say it looks too fat and over scale. So they can't win, can they? In my book anyway. So I'll see you all soon for the next part, and we're going to get this one wrapped up. Bye for now.